Have you ever wondered what drives a person to commit not just one, but multiple heinous acts of murder? In the chilling underworld of crime, there lurks a particularly terrifying figure, the serial killer. These individuals are not your run-of-the-mill criminals. They are characterized by their repeated acts of murder, often following a characteristic, predictable behavior pattern. This horrifying breed of murderers is driven by a variety of motives, some understood, others shrouded in the darkest corners of the human psyche. Whether it's a twisted desire for power, an insatiable need for control, or a perverse pleasure in causing pain, each serial killer possesses a unique, deeply rooted drive that pushes them to commit their horrifying crimes. While some serial killers operate under the radar, others, due to their sheer brutality and number of victims, have etched their names into the annals of criminal history. Today, we delve into the dark corners of Chicago's history, unearthing the stories of its most notorious serial killers. Our journey begins in the late 19th century with a man named HH Holmes. Born as Herman Webster Mudgett, Holmes was a swindler, a bigamist, and most chillingly, a ruthless killer. He moved to Chicago in the 1880s, where he changed his name and began his life of crime. Holmes's most infamous creation was his murder castle, a macabre hotel of horrors built specifically for his gruesome deeds. This ominous structure, located in the Englewood neighborhood of Chicago, was a labyrinth of trapdoors, hidden rooms, and a basement fitted with a crematorium. Here, Holmes lured unsuspecting victims, often young women visiting the 1893 World's Fair, promising them lodging or employment. The World's Fair, also known as the Columbian Exposition, provided Holmes with a steady stream of victims. He charmed them with his suave demeanor, led them to his murder castle, and there they met their untimely demise. The exact number of his victims remains unknown, but it's estimated to be anywhere between 20 and 200. Holmes's reign of terror came to an end in 1894 when he was arrested for insurance fraud. But as the authorities dug deeper, they discovered the horrifying truth of his murder castle. Holmes was put on trial, and the evidence against him was overwhelming. He was convicted for the murder of his business partner, Benjamin Pitesel, and although he confessed to 27 murders, he was only legally connected to 9. Following his conviction, Holmes was sentenced to death. The man who once took pleasure in the suffering of others met his own end at the gallows. On May 7, 1896, H.H. Holmes was hanged at the Philadelphia County Prison. The murder castle, once a symbol of Holmes' gruesome legacy, was torn down in 1938. Today, a post office stands on the site, a stark contrast to the dark history that once unfolded there. Holmes was hanged in 1896 for his crimes, and his murder castle was torn down in 1938. Fast forward to the 1940s, we meet William Hearns, also known as the Lipstick Killer. As we delve into the past, we find ourselves in the midst of World War II. Amidst the global chaos, a different kind of terror was sprouting in Chicago. The name William Hearns may not ring a bell, but his gruesome alias, the Lipstick Killer, is sure to send chills down your spine. Born in 1928, Hearns was an intelligent child, but his brilliance was overshadowed by his dark tendencies. His life took a sinister turn when he started breaking into homes, not just for the thrill, but to feed a growing hunger for violence that would soon culminate into murder. The Lipstick Killer was infamous for his chilling calling card. He would leave behind lipstick messages at his crime scenes, a haunting signature that both taunted law enforcement and terrified the public. One such message, scrawled in a victim's home, read, "For heaven's sake, catch me before I kill more." In 1946, Hearns' reign of terror came to an abrupt end. After a series of missteps and a high-profile chase, he was finally apprehended. The trial that followed was a media circus, drawing attention from all corners of the country. Hearns, a mere teenager, was thrust into the spotlight, his name synonymous with fear and dread. After a controversial trial, he was convicted of 3 murders. The evidence, much of it circumstantial, was enough to seal his fate. Hearns was sentenced to 3 life terms, a punishment befitting his heinous crimes. Life behind bars was no less turbulent for Hearns. His attempts at parole were repeatedly denied, and he spent the rest of his days confined within the cold, imposing walls of Dixon Correctional Center. Hirons died in prison in 2012 after serving one of the longest sentences in history for a murderer. His death marked the end of a dark chapter, but the legacy of the lipstick killer lives on, a grim reminder of the horrors that can lurk in the shadows of ordinary lives. In the 1970s, we encounter Dean Call, a man with a sinister side hidden behind a sweet facade. His name may not be instantly recognizable to many, but the terror he unleashed is unforgettable. Born in 1939 in Fort Wayne, Indiana, Call moved to Houston, Texas with his family in the mid-50s, where he eventually co-owned a candy factory with his mother. Known as the Candy Man to neighborhood children, he would often hand out sweets, a seemingly harmless act that concealed a much darker reality. Call's life took a horrifying turn when he began a series of abductions, tortures and murders of at least 28 boys aged between 13 and 20 during the early 70s. He was aided by two teenage accomplices, David Brooks and Elmer Wayne Henley, who were lured into his gruesome activities with promises of money and gifts. Call's modus operandi was chilling. He would lure his victims to his home with the promise of a party or a ride, then restrain them before subjecting them to unimaginable horrors. For 3 years, Call carried out his horrific crimes with impunity, leaving a trail of devastation in his wake. Yet, in a twist of fate, it was one of his own accomplices who ended his reign of terror. In August 1973, during an argument, Henley shot and killed Call, bringing an abrupt end to the Candyman's spree. However, Call's death did not bring immediate relief to the community. His crimes only came to light after his death, when Henley confessed to the police, leading them to the multiple burial sites where Call had disposed of his victims. The discovery was a shock to the nation and left an indelible mark on the history of American crime. Call never faced justice for his crimes, as he was killed by his own accomplice in 1973. His story serves as a chilling reminder of the evil that can lurk behind the most unsuspecting of faces, forever casting a shadow on the memory of the Candyman. Our final stop takes us to the 1970s, where we meet one of the most infamous serial killers in history, John Wayne Gacy. In the heart of Chicago, Gacy lived a seemingly ordinary life. He was a successful businessman, a husband, a father, and even a popular community figure known for his performances as Pogo the Clown at local parties and hospitals. But beneath this facade of normalcy, a chilling reality lurked. Gacy was a predator who preyed on young boys and young men. In his suburban home, Gacy committed unspeakable acts of violence. He lured his victims with promises of construction jobs or simply overpowered them. Once they were in his clutches, he tortured and killed them, burying many of them beneath his house. His brutal spree claimed the lives of 33 boys and young men, but like all monsters, Gacy was eventually unmasked. In December of 1978, the disappearance of 15-year-old Robert Piest led investigators to Gacy's doorstep. As they dug deeper, they unearthed a horrifying scene. The remains of 29 victims were found under his house, while 4 more were recovered from nearby rivers. The trial that followed was a media frenzy. Gacy tried to plead insanity, but the jury wasn't convinced. His chilling confession and the gruesome evidence against him were too compelling. In March of 1980, Gacy was convicted of 33 counts of murder, making him one of the most prolific serial killers in US history. Gacy's reign of terror came to an end on May 10, 1994. After 14 years on death row, he was executed by lethal injection at Stateville Correctional Center. His last meal? A bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken, a dozen fried shrimp, French fries, and a pound of strawberries. Gacy was executed by lethal injection in 1994, leaving behind a legacy of terror that haunts Chicago to this day. Serial killers, while fascinating, remind us of the darkest aspects of humanity. The chilling tales of HH Holmes, William Hirons, Dean Call, and John Wayne Gacy are testaments to this. Each of these individuals, driven by their own twisted motivations, committed heinous crimes that sent shockwaves through Chicago and beyond. Holmes, the cunning architect of murder; Hirons, the young yet remorseless killer; McCall, the man with a sinister sweet tooth, and Gacy, the clown who brought only tears. Their sentences, some served, some cut short by death, serve as bleak reminders of their monstrous acts. The psychological aspects of these killers, their ability to blend into society, and the fear they instilled continue to impact our world today. They are examples of the worst of us, and they challenge us to understand, to prevent, and to overcome. Remember, behind these tales of terror are real victims. Let their stories remind us to be vigilant and to fight for a safer world.